Chapter 25 to 26. It could be said that Scathach, who has lived from the age of gods to the present, is truly worthy of her title as the legendary warrior. With just a small suggestion, Shirou was able to instantly grasp his core advantage. Or maybe this is the wisdom of Dun Scythe at play. Scathach's words are very accurate. Those servants are all ghosts from the past, and although the Holy Grail has granted them with modern knowledge, their ancient ways of life and understanding make it difficult for them to fully assimilate into modern society. There is a discrepancy between their knowledge and cognitive level. This is also true for the masters who are modern people but still hold conservative views as magus. The only one who fully utilizes modern knowledge is the envoy of justice, Emiya Kiritsugu. However, compared to his expertise in modern weapons, his knowledge of modern ways of life is probably not very extensive. Therefore, Shirou, coming from 2019, has more modern knowledge than anyone else among the participants, and this is also his greatest and most essential advantage. Based on this, Shirou has come up with a series of plans and has carefully calculated them one by one. It seems that he truly believes he stands a chance. Oh, if he could just get his hands on some Gatling guns, RPGs and the like, that would be even better. It would be even better if he had a few tanks and fighter planes at his disposal. But this seems to touch on the territory of mystery, and it appears that this kind of thing is taboo and cannot be done either. Still, there is no other choice, so he will have to think in this direction. To survive, he doesn't care about any tricks. He will use whatever tricks he can think of. However, before he can do that, he must first determine how much the selection of participants in this Holy Grail War has changed. October 4th, 1993. 9:24 a.m. The Fujimaru family boarded the underground train bound for Hokkaido, a small territory with a total area of about 380,000 square kilometers. The train ride took 3 hours, but once they arrived, they could easily travel to any part of Hokkaido within a day by train. In the afternoon, Fujimaru Narita arranged a guest house, and following a suggestion from Shirou, the Fujimaru family and Sakura ignored his absence. Shirou lowered his head and said, "Have fun." He grabbed some money and the house key from his father's bag, then set off towards his own death battle, Chat, Fuyuki City. It was 9:23 p.m. when Shirou stepped on this land again. As he returned to this land, Shirou's heart was filled with tension, hesitation, and fear, a stark contrast to his feelings when he had left with his family. In the next half-month or even less time, this place could very well become his graveyard. Shirou wrapped himself in his blue coat, taking a deep breath. Winter was coming, and tonight's Fuyuki City was 1 degree colder than usual. As Shirou walked towards his house in Shinto, the sound of complaining voices caught his attention. "Stupid, stupid, stupid, how dense can you be? Do you want to be the death of me? I'm your master, and you are my servant. You should follow my commands. Got it?" Shirou stopped in his tracks and turned to see a red-haired man in armor and a black-haired young man engaged in a heated argument in the garden nearby. The red-haired man was imposing, standing at an imposing height of 9 meters with intimidating, bulging arms. In contrast, the young man was slender and had a fragile appearance. Normally, the young man wouldn't dare to provoke the huge man due to their significant size difference. However, it seemed that the young man was fearless, pointing at the red-haired man and cursing him without fear of being attacked. This was, of course, because they were participants in the Holy Grail War. The young man was the master, Waver Velvet, a typical young man with a high ego and low practical ability, but he would later become one of the lords of the Clock Tower. The red-haired giant was the famous conqueror, King Iskandar. Shirou quickly checked to make sure he had gloves on and that his Saint Graph was still turned off. With a somber expression, he lowered his head and thought about taking a different path. Just as he turned to leave, a large hand came down on his shoulder, and a commanding voice spoke from behind him. "Wait, child." Oh no. Shirou's body instinctively trembled as he turned around to face the voice. He double-checked that he had not fused with his Saint Graph and was still wearing gloves before looking up at Iskandar, who was holding his shoulder with a timid expression. Uncle, is there something you need from me?" "Ah, you scared the child." Iskandar hadn't even spoken yet, and Waver had already started yelling. Then he gave Shirou a friendly smile and said, "Don't be afraid, little friend. We're not bad people." I'm not afraid. Please don't recognize me as a master. Please don't recognize me as a master." Shirou secretly prayed in his heart. Iskandar reached out his hand and snapped his fingers on Waver's forehead, causing Waver to cry out in pain. He then lowered his head slightly and gave Shirou a friendly smile. "Young one, do you know where one can easily acquire knowledge?" It seems he didn't recognize me. Shirou felt relieved. It seemed not everyone had the bug eyesight like Gilgamesh. This was truly good news. "To obtain knowledge, you can go to school," Shirou answered without hesitation in a childlike tone. "Uncle, do you want to go to school?" Iskandar asked. "Besides school, where is the place where you can obtain the most knowledge?" "The library," Shirou answered. "There are so many books there." "Where is the library?" "Over there," Shirou pointed to a street not far away. "The largest building." Iskandar chuckled. What a well-behaved child. He then turned to Waver. Waver's face was full of caution as he asked, "What do you want?" Waver also had a smile on his face, but he was pissed. This guy didn't even ask him and just took money from his pocket. "Use it to buy candy to eat," Iskandar said. "Oh, thank you, uncle." Shirou stuffed the money into his pocket and turned to leave. Not far away, he immediately heard a loud shout from Waver Velvet. "That's my money! You took my money as a reward, you stupid servant! Did you get my permission? I am the master. You have to listen to me, stupid servant!" That was close, however. One group has already been confirmed. Rider Group unchanged. Shirou's eyes lit up slightly and he touched his pocket. Additional war funds were obtained. Shirou returned home, and that night he did not go to meet Skathash in his dreams, but instead sorted through the information he had. A scapegoat. Shirou understood that in order to conceal his identity as a master, he needed a substitute master or scapegoat to serve as a decoy so he can disguise himself as caster. This will solve one of his problems. But, despite this realization, deep down he still desired to have another scapegoat take his place as a servant, yet he knew there was no way to make it happen. The distinctive aura of servants is easily recognizable. It's the same with his unique aura brought by his Saint Graph. But this is only when he was activating it. This is why Matu Zuken initially failed to see through him as a servant, underestimating him and ultimately resulting in defeat. However, when considering someone to act as a substitute, Shirou couldn't bring himself to use an innocent person as a sacrifice. After much contemplation, he could only choose someone who is extremely nefarious. Thus, the only viable option was Uryu Ryunosuke, who still roams free as a murderer. Trying to enter the deadly whirlwind of the Holy Grail War and then attempting to escape from it? Impossible. Ryunosuke is simply elusive and difficult to capture. The only thing for certain is that this individual is still in Fuyuki City. However, it is of little concern as he is no match for Shirou. Even someone like Ryunosuke, who managed to evade justice in the technologically limited 1990s, would not be able to evade capture in today's world of nationwide surveillance cameras, instant internet access, and DNA tracking technology. It is sufficient to demonstrate to him the true meaning of justice in a harmonious society. And with his mastery of Magecraft, Shirou now possesses the ability to match the technological advancements of 2019. There is a basic form of Magecraft known as search, which uses a strand of hair from the targeted individual to locate their whereabouts. Even though Shirou may not be aware of this particular Magecraft, it is ingrained in the spiritual foundation of Emiya. The range of the search is determined by the amount of magical energy used in the Magecraft. Shirou's magical attribute is at a level of C, which is sufficient to use the search Magecraft to locate Ryunosuke within Fuyuki City. However, this Magecraft is only effective against ordinary individuals, as a true Magus has many ways to counter it. Fortunately, as Ryunosuke has not yet summoned his servant, he remains an ordinary person and thus can be easily found by Shirou using this Magecraft. With a well-constructed plan in place, Shirou visited the police station at dawn and used suggestion to obtain a strand of hair found at the scene of Ryunosuke's kidnapping. Utilizing this strand of hair, he spent 3 hours tracking down Ryunosuke, who was hiding in a small dilapidated house in Shinto and on the brink of starvation. Upon seeing Shirou, Ryunosuke was perplexed. Shirou then employed a powerful form of suggestion to hypnotize him into believing that he was a master. Shirou brought him to a relatively secluded tattoo shop in Shinto. Using suggestion again to influence the tattoo artist, the artist followed Shirou's instructions and tattooed command seals onto Ryunosuke's right hand. Shirou had previously considered using tattoos to conceal the seals, but it was not feasible with his parent around, as suggestion can be easily undone when there is a lack of consistency between the brain's cognition and reality. Furthermore, as a mother, Mrs. Fujimaru would not have been pleased to see her son getting tattooed. The idea did not come to him later, when he was trying to escape Fuyuki City. At this point, these elaborate actions are no longer necessary, as it would be more advantageous to create a master and have them sacrifice themselves instead. Ultimately, the tattoo artist makes a living with their skills, and the tattoo on Ryunosuke's hand looks very realistic and like a true command seals just by looking at it. After the tattoo was completed, Shirou used suggestion again to make the artist forget about this incident. He also did not pay him, not because he wanted to avoid paying, but because doing so would create an inconsistency with reality and could cause the artist to have doubts, which might break the suggestion and increase the chance of this matter being exposed. Despite the small chance of it happening, Shirou knew that in the midst of a death battle, every precaution must be taken. With that in mind, he made a mental note to pay the bill after the war was over. The tattoo served as a symbol of Ryunosuke's new role as a master, and he couldn't wait to see what the future held for them. It was ironic that Ryunosuke had pulled Shirou into the deathly vortex of the Holy Grail War, and now, because of Shirou, Ryunosuke too was caught in its grasp. Perhaps this was what the Buddhists would refer to as karma. The two of them were now entwined in a fate that neither of them had chosen, but it was too late to turn back now. Shirou knew that he couldn't return home. As he was now a participant in the Holy Grail War, his own house was not a safe option, as it would put his family in danger if he were targeted by other masters. The house, which he and his family had worked hard to purchase and were still paying off a mortgage on, would be at risk of being destroyed in the war, causing not only the loss of property, but also potential financial ruin and mental stress for his parents. He needed to find a new base to operate from, one that would keep his family out of harm's way. With the ongoing war, Shirou understood the importance of having a safe and secure base of operations. After much searching, he eventually came across a cheap rental home that belonged to Ryunosuke. Though the house was in a state of disrepair, it offered the perfect solution. The Saint Graph was truly remarkable. There was no denying that. Despite having no prior knowledge of Magecraft, the moment Shirou fused with it, an understanding of fortification construction flooded into his mind. This allowed him to complete the renovation of the rental house with ease. Though the E-ranked skill was only for simple modifications, it still provided a level of protection against magic, which was certainly better than nothing. After finishing the renovation of the rental home, Shirou turned his attention to creating an item that could aid him in protecting innocent people. Using his caster's skill, Item Creation E, he crafted a bracelet, which he then gave to Ryunosuke, sealing suggestion into it. The bracelet would constantly suggest to Ryunosuke that he is a participant in the Holy Grail War and a good person, thus preventing him from causing harm to anyone during the war. Once the bracelet was prepared, Shirou moved on to his next task, using his projection to bring forth a variety of materials, then using his Item Creation E. Again, he crafted a transparent film with a powerful magical aura. This film was then affixed to the back of Ryunosuke's right hand, where the command seal's tattoo was located. Yes, the transparent film that Shirou created was infused with a significant amount of magical energy, acting as a source of magic that would aid in concealing the fact that Ryunosuke was just a normal person. It was designed to fool other magi into thinking that Ryunosuke possessed magical abilities of his own. If the transparent film that Shirou created did not have the desired effect, he would have to accept that fact and move on. He had already exhausted all of his own ideas and wisdom based on his current level of understanding. His last resort was to do his best, and then leave the rest to fate. As Shirou sat on a bench, he glanced once again at his attributes panel, which displayed mostly E-ranked attributes. A feeling of faint sadness washed over him as he realized the limitations of his abilities. He knew that these attributes would only allow him to bully Magi, but would not be enough to defeat a servant. Furthermore, the servant aura emanating from his Saint Graph, when he uses its abilities, made it impossible for him to disguise himself as a master. Everything he was doing was out of necessity, and not by choice. It was all forced by helplessness. In this situation, all he could do was give his best effort and leave the outcome to fate. As Shirou scrutinized his attributes, something caught his attention, and he stared at it, wide-eyed in shock. Among his inherent skills, he noticed a new one that had been added. Why is there an additional skill in my inherent skills? The wisdom of mortals. D. Confused and surprised, he couldn't tear his gaze away from the new skill that had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. He couldn't fathom how this skill had come to be.